In this episode, we talk about the Nobel Prize-winning discovery that redefined our understanding of the immune system and how it protects our body without harming it. We also take a look at US President Donald Trump's claim that India would no longer buy Russian oil and how India has reacted to that claim. But we begin today with Supreme Court's partial lift on the years-long ban on firecrackers while allowing green variants on a trial basis in one of the world's most polluted cities. Hi, I'm Ichha Sharma and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Every year during the festive season, concerns about Delhi's air quality dominate the headlines. That's because around October and November, pollution levels in the capital begin to rise sharply, a problem that gets worse with the burning of firecrackers during Diwali. Now, a series of previous orders by the Delhi government and the Supreme Court had imposed a complete ban on all kinds of firecrackers in the NCR in recent years. But this week, the court relaxed that absolute ban, allowing government-approved green crackers on a test case basis. The order passed by a bench of Chief Justice of India B.R. Gavai and Justice K. Vinod Chandran attempts to strike a balance between the livelihood concerns of the firecracker industry, festive traditions, and the public health crisis caused by air pollution every winter. Now, reacting to the order, Chief Minister Rekha Gupta expressed gratitude, saying the decision respects the sentiments and enthusiasm of people during sacred festivals like Diwali, while also reflecting a balanced approach towards environmental protection.
दिल्ली की समस्या अपनी जगह है और उसके लिए काम करना एक समाधान है, परंतु दिल्ली के और देश के करोड़ों लोग जो धर्म प्रिय हैं, जिनके लिए दिवाली एक बहुत बड़ा त्यौहार है, भावनाओं से जुड़ा है, प्रभु राम की वापसी से जुड़ा है, ऐसे में मैं ये समझती हूँ कि उन्हें ये अनुमति मिलनी चाहिए, चाहे ग्रीन क्रैकर के रूप में मिले, ताकि वो अपने त्यौहार को अच्छे से मना सकें। और दिल्ली सरकार भी इसको लिखित रूप में माननीय कोर्ट के समक्ष अपनी इच्छा जाहिर करेगी कि सरकार अब पूरी तरीके से अपनी जिम्मेवारी पॉल्यूशन के प्रति रखती है और उसे निभाएगी भी।
But now the question is, do green crackers actually pollute less than regular ones? And how effectively can this order be enforced? To answer these questions, my colleague Niharika Nanda speaks to the Indian Express's Sophiya Mathew.
Sophiya, can you begin by telling us what has been the Supreme Court's stance over firecrackers and the ban on them over the years?
Right, Niharika. So this matter has been in the courts for over a decade now. It all began in 2015 when 3 infants reached the court and through their father, who was Supreme Court advocates then, actually approached the Supreme Court wanting a relief from the horrible air pollution levels in the city. So after that, in 2016, what happened was the Delhi Pollution Control Committee had restricted the use of firecrackers but made a particular exemption for religious occasions. Then in 2017, again, the Supreme Court heard the matter and it banned 5 chemicals, toxic chemicals, including arsenic, lead, antimony, mercury, lithium. And it suspended cracker licenses for those who used to sell them in Delhi. So in 2018, there was the landmark judgment called Arjun Gopal versus Union of India. So in that, the Supreme Court said the green crackers should be allowed. Green crackers are the ones which produce low emissions. And it also said that there should be fixed time slots and restricted it for 2 hours. So now in 2020, then this matter reached the National Green Tribunal and NGT imposed a blanket ban on firecrackers in Delhi. So every year, the Delhi Pollution Control Committee has been issuing bans, but then it used to be seasonal and it used to end till January. And the change happened last year in December 2024 on Supreme Court's insistence. DPCC imposed a blanket ban for throughout the year. So now after 2024 December, we've had a complete ban on all kinds of firecrackers, be it green crackers or other crackers throughout the year. And then the latest judgment came in October 2025, 15th October 2025, when the Supreme Court has allowed the use of green crackers in Delhi on a test case basis.
And if we talk about green crackers, can you tell us what exactly are they, how are they made, and are they actually better than the regular firecrackers?
So this is a very important question which is asked by everybody. So green crackers first came into picture when the Supreme Court 2018 judgment related to the firecrackers hearing came in. So this was actually developed by Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, and there's a body called National Environmental Engineering Research Institute. It's called NEERI and comes under CSIR. This is a centers body, and it developed these so-called formulations. It means it changed basically the chemical compositions compared to the traditional firecrackers, and it produced certain crackers which, when these are burst, they cause less pollution and they reduce the particulate matter pollution at least by 30%. So what they did essentially was they used less raw materials, and the physical properties are different, and even the after effects, like when you burst the firecrackers, the sound levels are very low. There's a cap of 120 decibels. But traditional firecrackers are quite loud than that. So good thing was that these particular crackers have avoided the use of barium nitrate and sulfur dioxides and nitrogen oxides, which are actually very harmful. So this is how these green crackers are different. And one more interesting thing is that they actually release dust suppressants and water vapors to actually let the particulate matter settle down. And that's how pollution is reduced.
And you mentioned how this year the Supreme Court had allowed the sale of these green crackers on a trial basis. So tell us what has been happening on the ground since then, and what have been some of the reactions to this order?
So when I spoke to many people and experts and scientists about this, I realized there's a complete divide in public opinion on the use of crackers and whether there should be a ban, whether there should not be a ban. So people generally said was that there were many who were concerned about their children's health and the elderly at home, and people who already have existing underlying health conditions, respiratory issues. So they were very much concerned. I was told, for example, by one mother that how can we let Delhi be a gas chamber for our children? And green crackers is the misleading term, is what I've been told, because they say that cracker still emits pollution. It's not 100% reduction from pollution. So these are some concerns that people have expressed. They've also said that lifting such a ban after so many years would create a lot of excitement among the general and lead to bursting of high volume of firecrackers. So because of that, it'll have a counterproductive effect on the judgment, because even if the cracker releases lower emissions than the traditional ones, if a high volume of such kind of crackers are burst, then it'll still cause a lot of pollution. Another resident whom I spoke to had said that it will create pollution spikes, which may not be concerning, or people in general might think it's a temporary matter and after post-Diwali it will all be cleared. It's a matter of few days, but these pollution spikes are actually very harmful because it's many times exceeds the permissible limits set by World Health Organization and national standards.
And Sophiya, this started with a plea regarding health of infants. So can you tell us the kind of impact this pollution has had on people's health, particularly children?
So the issue about public health has been the center of discussion throughout these years when the matter has been in court. And even in the Supreme Court order which came in on Wednesday, Supreme Court has said that it aims to balance the concerns of the firecracker industry as well as the public health. So public health has always been taken the center stage. And what Central Pollution Control Board and state pollution bodies have said is that asthma, respiratory distress, illness, and all this, there's a high risk for these disorders among vulnerable sections among the public. As the air quality index increases, like once it becomes poor or very poor or severe plus, etc. And mind you, these are the stages set by the Central Pollution Control Board as the AQI levels increase. And with increase in every stage, there is a higher risk for health issues among the public. So doctors have said that over the years that there's a clear impact among children, pregnant women, elderly, even fetus. Even people with underlying health conditions are especially vulnerable. So hospitals also have reported surge every year almost since 2016. We have been seeing hospitals have reported surge following Diwali.
And Sophiya, talking about the ban, what is the reason that the court actually decided to relax the ban and allow the burning of these green crackers?
So the Supreme Court had previously indicated, for example, in September, there was an order that allowed for manufacturing of green crackers in NCR. So the idea of taking a balanced approach has always been told by judges in the court and all of that. So there's always an emphasis and multiple pleas over the years by firecracker traders associations and even by the center, ensuring that the government, this time especially the center and the state government, jointly appealed that they will increase random sampling, ensure compliance, and they sought for a relief for this ban. I think this was somewhere expected is what people have said. So another important point which the Supreme Court bench observed in its latest order was that still there are concerns addressed by the industry, and there is also the issue of ban having not really put an end to the bursting of firecrackers, especially during festive days, when the conventional firecrackers are smuggled, which cause a more damaging effect than the green crackers now develop. So this was told verbatim, this was observed verbatim by the bench. So essentially there was also an apprehension shared during the court hearing that over these years, bans have not been properly enforced. And this could actually have a even worse effect on the crowd because of the unchecked use of crackers. So what the Supreme Court has mentioned, especially this time, is that they want to lift the ban on a trial case basis to check whether a carefully regulated framework could actually coexist with efforts to control air pollution. And one important thing that we have to note is that in 2018 also there was a allowance for green crackers for an experimental basis. So this has been tried in Delhi before, and it could be because it has been such a long matter, and maybe that has played into the minds of the judges.
Sophiya, you mentioned that over the last few years, the ban was not enforced properly and crackers were being sold. So what do the traders and retailers have to say about this development? Is this something that they're happy about?
So Niharika, their primary concern has been that this is a partial relief, and this is exactly the phrase that they have used, calling it a partial relief, mainly because this is a 3-day relaxation. So the traders have mainly pointed out that there could be stock related issues because it was since Wednesday, October 15, the order had come, and October 20 is Diwali. So it was just a 5 days gap, and also the traders don't have licenses. So getting a license ready for mainly selling and getting a booking done with dealers and all of that to get the process started itself would begin once they get proper licenses. So their worry is also that. But on one hand, Delhi government has assured that temporary licenses need to be provided on priority within 2 days. So that's also happening, but still it remains a concern. And small manufacturers have also stressed that because it's a very uncertain matter, it has been in the courts, 9 years is a very long time is what they have said. So many people who have been in the industry have switched to other jobs. So it's also a hassle to get skilled labor, to get the packaging done. Because, mind you, the Supreme Court has also directed that firecrackers need to come in only from NCR region and not from outside NCR. So all these areas like Sonipat, Panipat, Ghaziabad, areas in Haryana, these will see a increase in activity. But of course, these units will not be sufficient for the demand, high demand that we can expect in Delhi is what traders have said. Also, all of a sudden, because this decision has come in, it will open up the entire market at the same time. So it will lead to high competition and they cannot expect the prices to be high.
Right. So what is the current status and what are some of the do's and don'ts of the Supreme Court's order?
So firstly, the emphasis is on that only certified green crackers need to be sold. And how is this ensured? So basically, to identify a green cracker, there is a green or yellow logo that is put on the firecracker. It's either mentioned green crackers or CSIR. There'll be such mentions, or there's also a QR code placed in the packaging. So this is all done to ensure that it is a product which is approved by the CSIR NIRI and PISO, Petroleum Explosives Safety Organization. Otherwise, these will be confiscated if there are traditional crackers. And another important points the Supreme Court has stressed on is that the sale of these green crackers will happen in designated locations. And these are to be identified by district collectors or commissioners and along with the help of police consultation. Then there's also heavy patrolling that needs to take place. The Supreme Court has stressed that there need to be patrol teams, including the Delhi Pollution Control Committee officials and state pollution control bodies officials with the police officials. And they will be in charge of doing random samplings at all these locations where these green crackers have been sold. And if there are any violations found, then the particular seller will be penalized or their license will be or registration will be completely cancelled. So another important point that the Supreme Court has stressed is on the time constraints. And so green crackers can only be burst in these allotted times, which is 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning and 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. And also in only 2 days, 19th and 20th October. Just the day before Diwali and on the day of Diwali. Then Supreme Court has also stressed that there shouldn't be any banned chemicals that cannot be used and online sale is prohibited. And Supreme Court has also asked the Central Pollution Control Board and other state pollution control bodies that are in NCR to monitor the AQI from 14th October to 25th October. And they need to also take samples of sand and water wherever, they find there's a high usage of firecrackers. And there should be a report that needs to be filed.
And next we shift our focus to a discovery that completely changed how we understand our immune system. Now it's easy to assume how our immune system works. Most of us know it's the body's first line of defense against diseases, and that it is supposed to attack anything foreign that enters our system. But for years, scientists struggled with one big mystery. How does our immune system fight viruses and bacteria without damaging our bodies? This question was so crucial that this year's Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded to 3 researchers who finally answered it. Japanese scientist Shimon Sakaguchi and American researchers Mary E. Brunkov and Frederick J. Ramsdell were the ones who won the prestigious award for discovering what they called the security guards of the immune systems. Basically, cells that keep our body's defenders from attacking their own home. To understand how this discovery reshaped the science of immunity and what it could mean for future treatments, we speak to the Indian Express's Anonna Dutt, who began by telling us what scientists did and did not know about the immune system before this discovery.
So when we talk about our own immune system, there are different types of cells that are part of the immune system. One of the very important ones are called T cells. And T cells also have different types. So we had known about something known as the helper T cell, which is basically like a patrolman who keeps an eye out for anything that's not a part of your body. And then there is the killer T cell, which basically kills the cells which have been infected by a foreign pathogen. What we did not know about is the regulatory T cells. So what scientists used to think the answer to why the T cells don't attack your own body is that when they are developing in the thymus, they go through a kind of test which eliminates the T cells which recognize the cells of their own body. So essentially a T cell which starts attacking the cells of your own body will be removed at this stage. But the scientists from Japan, Shimon Sakaguchi, who received the prize along with the US scientists Mary E. Brunkow and Frederick Ramsdell. So the Japanese scientist was the first one to think that, yes, there is this test that is happening, but there also has to be another type of cells that will keep in check the cells which have gone through this process and have still been allowed to enter the body. So that's when he started looking for this different type of T cells. And he discovered something known as regulatory T cell, which keeps a check on how much a T cell can attack even after they have been released through the central tolerance method of elimination.
Right, so helper T cells and killer T cells we already knew about. But what the Japanese researchers found were these regulatory T cells, which basically keep the other two T cells from attacking the body's own cells. And the process by which they do this was later called peripheral tolerance, right? Now, Anonna, one of the Japanese researchers you mentioned earlier, Shimon Sakaguchi, he was one of the key experts. So can you talk about the challenges he faced in making this discovery?
So one of the biggest challenges that this Japanese scientist had was how to recognize this different type of T cell. Now, when you look at the helper T cell and the killer T cell, they carry these proteins on their surfaces called CD4 for helper T cell and CD8 for killer T cells. So now he had to look for an equivalent for the regulatory T cells as well. And it took about a decade of research for him to find out that these new type of T cells also carry CD4, but they have another protein on their surface called CD25. And once he was able to establish that, he could measure the new type of T cell in the immune system. And that was his first paper. Yet, people remain in doubt of whether that is the case, because before the work of Mr. Sakaguchi, there were others who had tried to have this similar theory, and the data was not of the best quality. And that's why the people in the field sort of gave up on this idea. So when Mr. Sakaguchi's paper came out, yes, it was convincing, but people were still not 100% sure.
Right, and it was actually a decade later that the American researchers Brunkow and Ramsdell found some clarity regarding this whole process. So tell us, in what way did their research contribute to the discovery?
So both of them were looking for a cure for autoimmune diseases, and they were studying a specific type of mice known as scurfy mice, which gets like a scaly, flaky skin and lives for a very short time period. So these researchers were looking at why the scurfy mice have, these symptoms. And it was understood that they were getting this scaly, flaky skin and they were dying off because their tissues were getting attacked by their own immune cells. So they thought that, okay, the scurfy mice are the best example to study what can help in treating autoimmune diseases. And these two US scientists basically started looking for a needle in a haystack. They started looking for a gene that could explain why these symptoms occurred in the scurfy mice. And so, out of like millions of nucleotides, these scientists narrowed down about 500,000. And then they started mapping these. They shortlisted 20 genes that they thought could be linked to this autoimmune condition. And finally, in 2001, they came up with this one gene called FOXP3, which was responsible for this autoimmunity in the scurfy mice, but also a very similar human disease as well. So now that the Japanese scientists also knew that there's this gene, they were able to show how this gene is controlled with the regulatory T cells as well. And that's how we came to know of this whole peripheral tolerance regulatory system of the immune system.
Right, and Anonna, we understand that the discovery has completely changed how we look at immunity altogether. So could you talk about how this will help in future treatments, especially those concerning cancer and autoimmune diseases?
So now that we know the role of these regulatory T cells in the immune system, researchers are looking for ways to manipulate them. So take, for example, cancer. A cancerous cell can avoid detection by the immune system. And one of the methods by which it does that is having a lot of these regulatory T cells, which signal to the other T cells that, okay, this particular cancerous cell does not need to be destroyed. So the other immune cells cannot effectively attack the cancer cells. So one of the methods that, say, the newer therapies like CAR T cell therapy or newer immunotherapies, one of the things that they do is try to modulate the way these regulatory T cells work so that the other T cells can actually recognize and effectively kill the cancer cells. So thereby essentially using your own body's immune system to effectively treat the cancer. That is for cancer. Where it comes to autoimmune conditions, the scientists are looking at ways to bring in more of these regulatory T cells so that the immune system does not start attacking the patient itself. So in that, people have looked at again, something similar to CAR T cell therapy, where the researchers can take out the T cells from the body and modify them in the laboratory in a way that when it is given to the patients, it can calm down the overactive immune system. Some similar treatments can also be given, say, to patients who have undergone organ transplants so that they do not reject the new organs that they get. So all of these therapies are currently under development, and it was all possible only because now we understand how these regulatory T cells actually moderate the whole immune system.
And in the end, we talk about India's response to President Trump's latest claim on Russian oil. Earlier this week, US President Donald Trump said that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had assured him that India would stop purchasing oil from Russia. Speaking to reporters, Trump claimed that he had raised the issue directly with PM Modi, expressing this unhappiness over India's continued import of Russian crude, which Washington believes helps fund Moscow's war in Ukraine.
Modi is a great man, that he loves Trump, and he's assured me there will be no oil purchased from Russia. I don't know, maybe that's a breaking story. Can I say that? Would you say? There will be no oil. He's not buying his oil from Russia. It started. You can't do it immediately. It's a little bit of a process, but the process is going to be over with soon. And all we want from
Expressing his concerns, he also added that his next goal would be to convince China to take a similar action. The two sides are already in the middle of negotiations, and 2 months ago, the US had imposed an additional 25% tariff on Indian goods linked to Russian oil imports, effectively doubling the total tariffs to 50%. Now, what's interesting is that New Delhi has not confirmed whether such a conversation between the two leaders actually took place. The spokesperson for the Ministry of External Affairs, Randhir Jaiswal, said India's energy import policy is guided solely by the need to protect Indian consumers and ensure stable supplies in a volatile energy market.
Our energy sourcing requirements, you are aware of our broad approach that we look at what is there available in the markets, what is there on offer, and also what is the prevailing global situation or circumstances. Now on the
Jaiswal further added that India has long worked to diversify its energy sources and that discussions with the United States on expanding energy procurement have been underway for several years. He also noted that the current US administration had shown interest in deepening cooperation in the energy sector. Meanwhile, Commerce Secretary Rajesh Agarwal said India's crude oil purchases from the US had fallen from $25 billion to around $12 to $13 billion in recent years, leaving scope to increase imports by another $12 to $15 billion. Trade data for September this year showed that imports from the US rose 11%, while Indian exports to the US declined by 12%. For Washington, D.C., The push to get countries like India to reduce their energy dependence on Russia is part of its broader sanctions policy following the invasion of Ukraine. You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank, Bhargava, Niharika, Nanda, and me, Ichha Sharma. If you like the show, do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. You can also recommend it to someone you think may like it, with a friend or in your family. This is the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcast or write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.